I come in as an interpreter. Let me help you open up a line of communication. I got you speaking another language now to make your way through, but nothing's fixed, because now we got to start putting your dog in scenarios where you have to start really creating a fluent communication. She's telling you, I'm responding. Let me help you. No, you're fighting it. Okay, let me help. You have to be able to be so fluent in that only comes with practice and practice and practice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Care So Much. I'm so excited about today's guest. Her name is Kim Erickson, and she was actually recommended to come on the podcast by one of our previous guests, Yishan Lai, who did an amazing episode you can go back and listen to. She is here to talk about my favorite thing, which is dogs. So we are going to be talking about dogs today. She is a dog educator, and we're going to talk about all of the reasons why she cares so much about dogs.
First of all, thank you for having me. It's such an honor. When Yishan asked me if I'd be interested in coming onto the show, I was flattered and honored, because knowing the premise of the show, and it's just about how we care so much, I just feel like what I want to bring into what I train with people and dogs. Dog trainer, more like you said, dog educator, behaviorist. There's a lot of different terms out there. I care about helping people find success. I think in general, the idea of dog training is misunderstood as a whole. Commonplace idea of dog training puts a lot of assumption out there and a lot of pressure on people. And then that turns into unfair pressure on the dog to perform and behave a way that is honestly not very natural. I think dogs are capable of amazing things. We all know this. Look at how they can fall seamlessly into our lives, like many other animals. Because we're so comfortable with them in our human lives, we forget who they are. That can a lot of times be the root to a lot of problem behavior that people want trained away. So I want to come with the notion and the understanding of, look, if you're having a problem, look at this as your dog is trying to tell you something. There's something missing in your relationship. It's trying to communicate in the only way it knows how. I want to almost serve as an interpreter to understand what they're saying. What does that mean? Will making them sit stop that? No, it won't, and so that's what I mean about the idea of dog training refers to obedience-based and sit-down stays. And instead of what I want to come from is this place of, let's understand what they're trying to tell us. I always say communication's my love language. I love to talk, and I love to communicate, and I love being communicated with. I love finding connections with all kinds of personalities. And I think that dogs have such a broad expression and ability to express themselves in ways I don't think we give them enough credit. So I come passionate with the idea of your dog's just trying to tell you something and let me help. And then also bridge the gap. Okay, well, so if your dog is saying it's frustrated because of ABC, well, what does that mean? And what does that look like? So what do we got to do? What do I have to teach you to help you fulfill your dog in the ways your dog needs? Because we get all the things we want from dogs a lot of times, right? We get them with this idea of what they're going to bring to our lives, which is fantastic. Let's make sure we're in a healthy relationship, and a healthy relationship is giving and taking. So I got to give you what you want and what you need to be happy. And if I make you happy, then it ultimately makes me happy too. So it's like relationship building. One of the things I say all the time, train the relationship, train the lifestyle.
I'm sure I'm going to, whether intentionally or not, talk about my dog a million hours.
I hope so.
I currently she's for sure some sort of mix. She was a rescue. She's most likely Rhodesian Ridgeback.
She's a big dog.
She's about 3 years old now. And my journey with her was really the first time I had to truly train a dog. And learn about the things that you're talking about here, where it's that communication. It's that, wow, was that an overwhelming experience?
Yeah. It's humbling.
She was not my first dog. I had a dog when I was in high school. Old man. We adopted him when he was 10, mostly wanted to nap, lab.
The best.
Get old dogs.
Yeah, seriously.
They're so good.
Seriously. Everybody wants a puppy. And I'm like, oof.
I'm a big advocate for adopt old dogs, because the next dog that I adopted I got a almost 10-year-old Brittany Spaniel who was incredibly well trained. He definitely trained me, not the other way around.
Right.
He was the one who was like, here's how the rules work.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had dogs. I thought I knew what I was doing. I got what was supposed to be a 4-year-old lab. And then I was informed by the vet was a 1-year-old Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Mm-hmm.
She started out just really kind of high energy and like I thought needed to settle down. And then the more attached to me she got, the more reactive she got. And it was overwhelming. There was a ton of conflicting information on how to manage that.
That's a big thing I'm passionate about as well.
And I just had no idea what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what you're talking about of like understanding her. I'm imagining all of this is sounding very familiar to you.
If you were to reach out to me for dog training, I would first be relieved to hear you saying, I think there's something I'm missing. Because that's not, back to the point about this idea of what dog training is. It's not usually what people are looking at, what they need to be doing, as much as I want you to teach my dog to stop doing this. There's these board and train programs out there where I sent my dog away and it came back and it was good for a little bit, but nothing came from that. Nothing lasted long term. I do board and trains, but I do board and trains that involve the owners. We meet twice a week because ultimately I get the dog so educated, but that's living with me. And that's fantastic if it's going to live with me, but that's not the ultimate end goal, right? So it doesn't translate well for long-term results if the owner isn't brought in and understand how to, if I'm getting success in my house, it's because I'm setting up a certain set of patterns and understandings and rules and boundaries. And it's important that I then teach the owner how to repeat the same pattern. That pattern has to be adjusted to your lifestyle. Like the way I want to live with my dog might not be the way you want to live with your dog. I actually have a dog right here next to, there's a little one over here on the couch with me. And so I'm not going to be the dog trainer that says, get him off the furniture, never, ever. Now, if your dog has had separation anxiety, was guarding you, wouldn't let anybody near the couch, I'd be like, they need to get off the couch. What I'm coming around to saying is, what lifestyle do you want to live with your dog? Okay. And you might be like, oh, I want to take my dog to a patio. I want to be able to sit with it on the couch. I want to be able to walk down the street and I want to be able to have family over and not have it bite their ankles or something. Right. And then I'm going to say, okay, now here's what your dog wants though. Sometimes the reason why your dog is biting strangers and guarding you and all of it is because there's a fear involved. There's a fear. Not all dogs are good at patios. Not all dogs want to go on patios. Not all dogs want to do some of the things we impose upon them. And so helping understand what your lifestyle you want to live, but as long as it suits the needs that fulfill them, that's where I come in and try to bridge that gap. So I always appreciate when people come to me with, here's where we're struggling. And in there, I'm listening to the language. I heard you say, I'm missing something I had to learn. I'm being humbled. Like you were alluding to that. I'm listening to the way you're describing your dog and the way, because it tells me a lot about what you're looking for and what your opinion of dog training would be. And sometimes I have the task of teaching you to understand that this is not going to be a training thing. This is nothing to do with training as much as me educating you about what's missing. Of course, we're going to get into here's how we walk on a leash. Here's these I got techniques for all of it.
Yeah.
It all has to come down into understanding this lifestyle. I'm going to use this term probably over and over again in this training the lifestyle. My guy here, Samson, when I got him, he was a feral, almost feral. He was like a hoarding dog. Hoarding dogs are typically pretty scared of people. They don't have a lot of exposure at their young age, and they can tend to be a little standoffish from people, good with other dogs.
So what is a hoarding dog?
A dog that comes from like a hoarding case, like people that have a lot of dogs, but they're not taking good care of them. And they end up, I can't speak too strong about it because I'm not like, I work with rescue dogs a lot, but more as the trainer who comes in to help, not so much. I don't rescue. I'm not part of, rescuing.
Yeah.
But the point is he was basically held in a house with unhealthy conditions, living conditions. And when those hoarding situations happen, there's usually, some neglect and behaviors, unsavory behaviors, health, all of that. In that sense, there's not a lot of just everyday exposure. They're not like pets. They're just being kept and they come with their baggage. He was so scared, and he's a Mastiff Pit Bull mix, so he's tall. But when I first met him, I thought he was a small dog because he didn't walk. He didn't get his chest off the ground. He walked so slow and scared. We've taken a couple years getting him comfortable, but it wasn't. How am I going to train him, right, if I don't understand him? And so I don't even like the word train. That's why you said, what do you want to be called, dog trainer? I'm like behaviorist, educator, because I can't train emotion. I can support emotion and I can communicate and I can train the body to help do some physical things so that the brain and the heart can follow, right? The spiritual self can match that. been a couple years and now he's just Mr., he feels good about himself in the areas that he feels best. If I take him to a brand new space in a very public area, you'll see some old Samson pop back out. He's not like he was, but you'll still see him be like, hold on, what, but what I've trained him is I've taught him is, if you're concerned, look for me, come to me. I'll get you out of this. I'll protect you. And so what that might look like from a dog training perspective is you teach them leash work and recall and this and that. But I'm coming from more like, if you need help, come look for me. And I got you. I might be like, all right, come here. And I got you. Just be next to me. And I'm more focused on how the dog's feeling, not what it's doing. I'm wanting to arm people to understand and empower that side of their relationship. Like you said, what's your dog's name?
Ruth.
3 years old. COVID dog?
Yes.
Yeah, dog trainers are in the world of COVID fallout, which also made everybody's dog's worlds very small because we didn't get out. It's common for the last year or so, since we've all been moving back out into the world, that all these dogs get out and they're terrified because they were in our house and there's separation anxieties on the rise, guarding's on the rise, like all of that were unsocialized behavior. What I was going to say is, like you said, Ruth has some reactivity.
Similar to what you're talking about with your dog, she still has, I think I keep thinking back to it because it's the thing I can relate to. So this podcast is secretly about Ruth.
That's cool.
She used to be a lot more reactive. It was interesting how the behavior evolved because it started just kind of nervous, like really energetic. She would only stop moving if she was physically on top of me. And then as soon as she got cozy and comfy in my apartment, it was what I now understand to be, no, I had a rough time.
Yeah.
I got bounced around a lot.
Yeah.
Things were not great.
Yeah.
And then this lady is really nice.
Yeah.
And my job is to keep her very safe and to stay with her no matter what.
You got a little empowered.
Yeah. Everything that wasn't me was scary. And then as I started dealing with some of those behaviors, I definitely started with dealing with behaviors and not trying to understand her.
That's everybody.
So I took her to a puppy training class. It went really well. She's crazy smart.
Of course.
She loves training. It's a game to her.
That's great.
It's the most fun game in the world. We get to hang out and get treats and talk.
That's great.
That's the only thing I ever want to do.
Yeah, that's great.
The things that were really the problem, that were really scary to her, that's when they came to the surface. Is once she understood what the rules were, when she would break the rules was how I could figure out. This is where I was missing something. Because the trainer was like, she's so great and she's so smart and she should be figuring this out. So it wasn't until I found somebody who described themselves as a behaviorist who was going to train me. The first time I talked to her, she goes, we're not training your dog. We're training you.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And okay, great. I don't know if Ruth would lunge or what?
Big girl. She's strong. So she would bark and then pull her leash as taut as she could. She was 60 pounds when I got her. She's about 70 pounds now. The only thing I knew to do was to physically control her. She would be up on her back legs. She was pulling so hard on the harness.
Trying to leave or trying to go at it?
Trying to go at whatever it was. I just would yell at people from a distance to stay away from me.
Give us space. By the way, that's pretty much what Ruth was saying too, is we don't have it down over here. Give us space. We're all freaked out.
Stay away from my mom.
Yes.
And the reason why I knew that sending her away wasn't going to work is she would go stay with my dad sometimes during the day. And when she was with my dad, she was a lot better than she was when she was with me. He's special to her for sure. Yeah. But he's not her special savior lady who has to be protected.
Again, COVID didn't help a lot of dogs. So it stayed in your house with you too. All that. It was just the two of you. For her mind, it was like you and me, we're in this together. I want to be able to not just get a dog to stop lunging, right? Because if you were just to look at that as the solution, I wanted to stop lunging. Well, now you can open a book. You can open 40 books of different styles of how to get a dog to stop lunging, from special tools to corrections to rewards to lures to, there's so many different styles out there, and which one's the right one? Well, in a lot of ways, depends. Ones are going to work better for certain dogs in certain scenarios. But when it comes down to it, it's like, I just don't want to stop the lunge. I want her to feel like she doesn't need to anymore. That's the thing I'm looking for, is like, I have a dog in our care right now that in one of our sessions, they were like, she goes crazy for skateboards. And she did. She would just lose her mind and just alligator roll and just, even if she just saw one. And she's been staying here. We've been working it. And just a couple days ago, we have a video of her riding on, so one of my team members is kicking the skateboard and she's jogging along with the skateboard. We have another video where we put it on Instagram and she's just sitting on the skateboard, kind of wagging her tail while it's rolling. And again, the sound of the wheels and the action of it moving, like she's just a terrier and had this need to. And the point I was making is that she's not just accepting skateboards. She's not just no longer trying to attack the skateboard, barking, pulling. She's actually sharing space with the skateboard. She feels good about it. She feels she's changed she's changing her mind, and she's learning to accept and understand that it's just not a thing to worry about or get excited about or go after. And of course that needs time to practice more of, because if you've been practicing this, she's 9. So she's been practicing skateboard reactivity for 8-9 years. That's not going to be solved in a week or 2. But at least we've got her looking at it differently now. And what we can do is send her home with information and we do a lesson with the owners and be like, here's how I want you to continue to grow this feeling. And there comes the technique. There comes, how did we get that? Okay, let me show you how we did that. Give the tools and the technique to the owners to continue to change the feeling.
So if somebody who's listening to this is going, that's great, I would love to magically change how my dog is feeling.
Yes.
They're a new client to you. It's day 1. They're talking to you for the first time. And they give you this list of behaviors. And I can make some up if you want.
Sure.
What would be the language that I use now is absolutely because of the training that I got. I was wildly emotional because I thought I had failed my dog, because I at least understood that her behavior, I don't believe in bad dogs.
Same.
There's dogs who have been in situations where they're not going to be happy in every home. So I was afraid that that's what had happened. But because things started out fine, I assumed I had done something.
To be fair to you, a lot of training out there kind of puts that on people too. There's a lot of shame attached to it. Yeah.
I basically felt completely overwhelmed. I felt like I had made some terrible mistake, and that this dog, that because I got her during COVID, and I don't know if this was true everywhere, but I live in Minnesota. We adopt more dogs than we have homeless dogs. So we import dogs from other states and sometimes other countries.
Yeah.
So there were no dogs to adopt here during COVID. So I was like fighting to get a dog, working with rescues. So I fought for this dog, and then I felt like I was failing her. And so the call that I gave to a trainer was, my dog is reactive. She's totally out of control. It all would have been about her. She's totally out of control. Know what to do. So if I'm giving you that call, what are some of the first things that you're going to say to me?
I would first ask you, describe your life with your dog. And again, I'm listening to the language and the way you're saying it. Describe an average day with Ruth. And I would even ask you, you said the word, I'm trying to discipline. I would say, what does that mean to you? Discipline.
I yell at her if she barks at me.
Yeah, like consequence, you're in trouble. So, and I would say, is that all you do is yell, or do you do any more?
If, for example, what I was trying to do when she would lunge and bark is I would just try to pull her back, force her into a sit. That was the only thing I knew to do.
Put her in a box. Yeah.
And it did not work.
Okay. What kind of tools are you using? Harness is what I heard. And I would say, okay, and how's that working? It doesn't work. Okay. I would start asking a lot of questions. Okay, well, walk me through an average day with Ruth. Where does she sleep? How much do you walk her? How much exercise do you get?
So I lived in an apartment at the time, which is a whole other level of not a thing I should have done with this dog.
Questions I would have gotten to, though. I would have been like, and what's your environment like for her?
But it had an off-leash dog park. So I would take her there. This, I think you would understand. At the time, the only way I could get her to be calm is if she was exhausted. So she would go to the dog park like at least 30 minutes. We would play the most intense game of fetch, but it was really bite my hand. Like she would run for like 30 minutes 3 times a day. And then I would take her back. And anytime she got overly excited, I would just take her back to the off-leash dog park to get her to run again.
Did you find that the more you did that, the more you had to keep doing it?
Yup.
I would say play is fun and it's great. And it's clearly doing some work to tire her out physically, but what are you doing for her mentally? What are you doing for her to challenge the brain? What are you doing to challenge with all that play? What are the rules? Because is she biting at your hand? Does she know to wait? Can you at least put some kind of brain game to it? Like, I don't care if it's, be 4 feet from me and sit and give me eye contact. And then once I get just applying a couple little things can make that physical exercise less chaotic. So now your exercise is definitely physically based, but it's also excitement based. So let's work the body, but let's also bring the excitement down in that physical, right? By adding a couple of rules and specifics. And I want to teach you a drop it. So we're not wrestling and, like I'm not getting my hand bit, and all of that. So there's a little mental work involved in that. But I would also say play is not exercise in my world, in my book. Play is play. Exercise to me, like I'm going to say, let me be a little broader. Exercise can be a lot of different things, but let me get specific about there's play time, there's explore time, like the dog being able to just navigate its environment and use its nose, which dogs get to do that when they go in fields to throw a ball. They end up sniffing around sometimes. That's explore, right? But what about follow? How much time does your dog practice following compared to playing, exploring, and resting? So if there's 4 states I'm looking for, I want a dog to be able to get all 4. I want them to play. I want them to explore. I want them to rest. But it's really hard to create a restful, peaceful dog if you're not doing follow, play, explore in balance. So I would say, where's your follow? What kind of boundaries do you set in your life? What in your walk? Like, is she pulling you everywhere? Is she, I'd be asking a lot of questions, starting to get into who's I hate the term alpha. I look at packs of dogs like family. There's a family dynamic, not alpha beta dominant submission. I don't subscribe to that because they're actually very emotionally capable dogs of doing a lot more. And even when you watch true wild feral dogs, there's not like the alpha walking around kicking everybody's butt. A lot of this alpha dominant training is out. Sure, there should be, just like in our family, there's a matriarch and a patriarch, and it doesn't matter if it's your mom or your dad, your grandparent, whatever. They're the ones that's going to set some rules and some boundaries and tell us what's what in the ways of the world. And they're also going to be the ones, they're supposed to be the ones that teach us, and they're supposed to be the ones that hold us accountable and do that in a balanced way. Now, not all, I'm a parent and I'm not going to argue that I did it perfectly, and but the idea is, did I raise my daughter, who's in college now, to be just a decent human being? Common sense, basics of just good and bad, according to our societal standards and rules, right? And who taught Ruth the ways of our world? And again, how much of that is human implication and how much of that is dog satisfaction? So it gets complicated, as I start talking about it, it mushrooms out, but there needs to be, for sure, there needs to be a leader, but I don't talk about it like pack leader and all of that so much as where's the person in charge? But with that, I mean, like, we listen to our moms, even once we get older, we still respect our parents and our elders. And so where's the hierarchy in the family, in your house? Who's kind of calling the shots? Who's teaching who and who's holding who accountable? Yeah. And who's keeping you guys on track to live the life you say you want to live?
And if somebody had just straight up and down asked me who's in charge in your house, I would have been like, I don't know, probably me.
Yeah, I am, I think.
I think would totally be the words that I would use.
That's something I hear.
Yeah. So how do you teach people to recognize the reality of that and to be able to understand, to be totally honest and transparent for people? I was not in charge. She absolutely thought she was in charge of the house, and that was part of the problem. So yes, how do you teach people to notice that?
Here's something I learned a long time ago, is you can't just come out and tell people they're doing it wrong. You can't. I'll lose you. I'll shut you down. I'll put you right back to the shame thing we talked about, where there's like this shame implied on owners a lot. And even though absolutely it's our responsibility to make sure they have the best life and they're doing well, I'm not going to hook you or get you motivated to try harder by shaming you. I might get you started, but now you feel bad about yourself. And then that does not inspire longevity and consistency. It just doesn't. I don't want to make you wrong. I want to make you aware. Yeah. And I know that was your question. How do you make me aware of it? Well, I start asking questions, give them information. I could say, so what do you think? How does what you're doing align with what this needs or what this is? And I try to help bring people to it as best as possible. And then I could say, look, this may not make sense right yet, or you might not believe me yet, why it's so important. The dog is in the crate, whatever, but roll with me on this. Trust me, stick with it. because you have to, I tell people, if you're going to work with me, you're going to commit. Like we're going to be honest with each other. We're not going to just do one appointment and call me when you need me. I make people sign up for 5 appointments in a row, 1 week, every week. And that's just to get the foundations down. So in those 5 weeks, I'm like, you'll see a difference in 5 weeks. Trust me. So then sometimes I just plain bold ask people, trust me, trust the professional. And a lot of times I'm the 5th, 6th, 7th professional they've trusted. So I can understand why you might be a little hesitant. But I do my best just to come with my hat in my hand to say, I'm here to help. And sometimes when I tend to try to be really aware of people's the body language there and, the little fluxes of things going on. So if I feel like I'm hitting a soft spot, I'll just table it for a little while. And where can we start? All of this, if I were to tell you on a first consultation, everything I know you're going to need. So where do we start? Can we start by doing 1, 2, 3, right? Yeah. And honestly, I just try to get 1 to 2 things solid in every session of my basics, but every session, because when you have solid basics, then you get to the lifestyle. Yeah. You have to have a foundation to build a house. And so we got to build that foundation.
So when you say basics, what do you mean and why are they important?
So I talked about follow, play, explore. When you create a healthy balance of those 3 things, you create a restful dog, a peaceful dog, like a bar chart. I assess where you're low and where you're too high in, right? And that can be very situationally dependent. It could be breed specific. Some breeds have lower needs for work. Bulldogs, or I'm thinking of Basset Hounds or something, right? That are going to tucker out quicker compared to like a Vizsla or an Aussie or these high drive dogs that need more. Let's also think about age. You have to consider their age, right? Right. We love our seniors. They don't need as much, right? But younger dogs do. And so I take into breed and age, and then obviously personality, and then obviously the lifestyle you're looking for, and how compatible that is. And sometimes helping you understand what you might just have to be okay with. It's not like a failure. It's just like, it would be unfair to expect that of them. They don't want it. And helping you understand why that's okay.
In the same way that people have unrealistic expectations for each other, sometimes we have unrealistic expectations for a dog.
It's a relationship. It's a relationship. And if you're really coming to any relationship trying to keep each other happy, then you're going to give and take. And so the basics. So I'm looking for, what a lot of people are missing is the follow. They're missing that leadership element, the matriarch, the patriarch, the family element of, so trying to help, not squash play, not squash explore, but just like, let's dial that down a little bit. We know you're good at that, right? And even though there could be things we could adjust, like, the drop it and the step back and the rules we can apply around that. Let's talk about how she sees you. Ruth, let's use Ruth as an example, okay? Yeah. Knowing what I know. It sounds like you have a very scared dog. So I want to teach that, just like I have with Samson, right? I want to teach them that you don't have to be scared. Sometimes life might present scary scenarios, and might even have to put you in scary scenarios because I got to take you to the vet and I got to take you here. I'm not taking you to a patio, but there's life. Sometimes I'm going to put you in scenarios because we have to, and I need you to depend on me, and I want you to feel as best you can. So I have to teach you that I'm the one that's going to provide all the things you need, which is protection, right? Survival, when it comes down to it, is about providing, all the things we need, safety, security. When I say safety, I mean, like, you don't have to protect us. You don't have to rear up and bark at that person. I got it. If I'm talking to that person, they're accepted, even if they're across the street. Like, and again, this isn't I said, sit down and be quiet, as much as like, you're good. I got it. I got it. I literally sell t-shirts with my logo that say, I got this, across the front, because that attitude alone is, I just want to project that feeling of like, I got it. Chill out. And if you need some support, here comes some techniques I can give you that I use to show them how to set them up for success in every scenario possible. And it usually relates to follow to start with, because that's usually what's missing. Sometimes I get these dogs that are just so trained, so on point, that I'm like, ooh, do you ever play? Like, does the dog ever get to cut loose? It's either one or the other sometimes. Sometimes I start with, let's see what freedom looks like. I don't mean in the house. I mean, like, put a long line on it and let it go. Don't micromanage it. And, let it smell around. Let's see how it responds. Do you lose relevance? Like the minute it starts to explore, well, okay, that tells me something. Like Ruth may be having a grand time chasing that ball, but if there's three things I'm always looking for, I'm always looking for a dog that keeps me relevant no matter what. No matter how scared, how anxious, how excited, name any behavior, how intense it is. I'm relevant. They're soft in the mind about it, and they understand the concept of yielding pressure. So I always talk about yielding, softness, and relevance. That's where my basics come in, is I need to teach a dog. And it doesn't matter if I'm doing play, explore, or follow exercises. Yield pressures, keep me relevant, and stay soft.
Relevance, I think, makes inherent sense to me. It's that they're paying attention to you, right? That was a huge game changer for me when the moments when I realized Ruth was looking at me when something happened. The first thing she did when anything new happened was look at me. And she hadn't been doing that before. She was always, her job was to protect me. So she was always looking at whatever she considered the threat and didn't even check if I was scared about it. So flipping that was wild. How much that changed things.
I know.
But when you talk about soft and yield.
Softness is a state of mind, not a body position. I've got my 4 dogs loose in what I call free movement right now. One's on the couch, one's on the ground, the other one's laying down over there. They're in a soft state of mind, but truthfully, they're at their calmest point. So if I were to put it on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 is where they're at. I mean, they're passed out sleeping next to me. That's like as chill as it can get, right? 10 is their absolute ultimate worst. And it could be you have an overexcited dog, you have an anxious dog, a tense dog, an aggressive dog. It doesn't matter, just 0 to 10 of those scales. What you'll hear a lot in dog training is I got to teach the dog calmness, calmness, calmness. To me, calm is 0. And to me, calmness is hard to teach because you can't force it. So how do you coach a dog to that direction of coming down that scale? You mark as you acknowledge your reward. I use a marker word like yes. And, you mark moments of softness, which means they're clicking down the scale. So if you were a 9, you just gave me an 8. Yes. Right. And now you're at a 7. Yes. So and I show them a payment structure, so to speak, with like food or whatever it is they value that helps them understand, do more of that. Yeah. Every time I'm going to reward you every time you click down. You click down. And these are foundational basics. And I'm not going to put them in front of their trigger in the beginning. I'm going to teach them when it's easy. I like it when you soften. And I'm not looking for you to go from a 9 to a 0. That's unrealistic. A dog may go 9, 8, 7, but doesn't hear anything from you and spikes back up because that didn't work. Apparently that's not what you want from me. Right. So you have to catch those moments on the down, and you have to massage those, and you have to nurture those. And it can be so situationally dependent. That I just teach people to understand how to check moments that just went, oh, look, their ears dropped. Oh, they were holding their mouths closed and they opened their mouth. And sure, they sat, they laid down, beautiful, but all of it has to be volunteered. If I tell you to sit, doesn't mean you're soft. Definitely doesn't mean you're calm. We all know a dog can sit like this or sit and shake, and right. So a sit and a down and a stay. Okay, great. You've got them in this bottle, but that bottle is under pressure. It's being shaken up and it can blow. Yeah. Versus I don't tell you what to do in that sense. I'm not against obedience. I'd rather you volunteer it, and I'm going to mark it. So if you sat and then you stood right back up again, all right, well, you're working through it. So just like us, we have our things when we're nervous and but it's like we find it and then maybe I got to get up and I got to move around. But we have our coping mechanisms for stress. And some of us, we learn how, when we work on ourselves, we learn how to lean into the things that keep us okay. Yeah. And then when we get enough softness in us, then we can relax and settle in.
These things about dogs' body language that I now know to see, it would always astonish me when she would be out of nowhere. She would go from totally chill to freaking out, and I had no idea what was happening.
And this is why I care so much, because I just got fired up hearing you say that, because dog educators can teach our owners how to identify this. You realize how much your dog is trying to communicate with you. I'm getting so excited because when that breakthrough happens, I get goosebumps just thinking about it, because holy crap, you've been telling me all along. And it's not that you didn't want to hear it or you're pushing it away. but you just didn't understand how to speak the language. And it's starting to be clear. And once the dog knows you're communicating and you saw that, they'll talk more. They'll talk. They'll communicate. Now that you're listening, let me show you even more. And so it's very common, actually, that once I get a couple lessons in and I start working with that, we start seeing explosive behavior. And I'm like, this is so normal for the dog to now, because it knows you're paying attention now. And it needs to tell you, I'm using these quotes. It needs to show you. And I believe in honoring their expressions. I don't believe in suppressing dogs, which is a lot of dog training out there. Even in many sense, making them sit is a suppressive behavior. Why? Why do they have to sit? It's clearly not making them feel better.
That very first class that I took her to, which was just like a basic training class that I'm sure for some dogs is fine. That's all you need. And honestly, for some people it's fine, because that's probably what they need.
It works for who it works for, but those are not the dogs I get.
Well, and the dog, so basically she had this big leap forward of behavior. And what I would guess it was, she's the smartest dog I've ever interacted with. And maybe it's because I've interacted with her more, but she's like unbelievably smart. That was a big jump because it was her understanding what I was saying to her. So she started to learn the rules and learn what I wanted, but I was not hearing her at all.
Yeah.
And that's what that next phase of training was, was going all these behaviors that like I could train her to sit and I could train her to like wait for her food bowl and like not get her food. And like I could train her to not rush through the door before me, but let me go through the door first. Like those were some of the things that I was making this progress. And then I hit this wall where I could not figure out why she was still barking at every person who walked past the window.
Because she couldn't train you to listen to what she needed. Great, I'll do all that you're asking for. What about what I'm telling you, what I need?
And so it was still a scary world because she could finally hear me, but I could not hear her.
In the very beginning, I'm like, I come in as an interpreter. Like, let me help you open up a line of communication. And even once, after I tell you, I have like the 5 appointments that I do. And I always say this when we're approaching the end, and Yishan's heard this before, but I was like, look, I got you speaking another language now. Like if I were to teach you Italian, you're speaking it. You can understand a good amount. But are you fluent? No. Could you carry a conversation at a party where everybody's speaking Italian? Maybe not. Like you could hang, but are you as fluent, right? So that's where I say, look, at those 5 appointments, I get you speaking the language. I get you understanding how to communicate, to make your way through, but nothing's fixed because now we got to start putting your dog in scenarios where you have to start really creating a fluent communication, seamless communication between she's telling you, I'm responding. Let me help you. No, you're fighting it. Okay, let me help. You have to be able to be so fluent in that, that only comes with practice and practice and practice. I get people speaking the language in 5 appointments, and I always tell them, this is not a package. I'm not promising anything. You will see improvement. Don't think in 5 appointments, Ruth will never bark at anybody ever again. No, and I always say it's not, they'll never do it again. It's, have I done my job? Have I taught you how to help her when she does? Because if you're helping her when she does, then the barking gets less. It diminishes because what you're doing now is changing the emotional state, not conditioning a physical state, like a sit, a down, a stay, or whatever. So that just like therapy, that takes reps and talking and communicating, and there it is. There's the magic.
I love the metaphor of another language because even how empowering it is because sometimes she'll develop brand new behaviors and habits that I'm like, where did this come from?
And it might just be an expression of the same thing. It's just realizing, well, that wasn't working. Let me find another way to show you. This is still lingering for me.
And so she'll do something brand new. But what happened the first time those behaviors manifested, I had no idea what to do. I had a moment where I'd taken her to this first trainer that was like that basic puppy trainer, and she'd gotten so much better. Yeah. And so I assumed that it was just going to be progress from here on out.
Yeah. Smooth sailing.
And then the things that were still bad got worse.
Yeah. Yes.
And I didn't know what to do about it. I had this one day in particular where I put her in the car. She is getting wound up the whole time. Now I realize what's happening, right? Like now
in hindsight.
She had started the whole ride just feeling like we were in a fight.
Yeah. Where we go. Let's get
Everybody's
ready.
attacking mom. Mom is really stressed
Yeah.
out. I should probably yell at everybody about it. Like, I finally get to my mom's place. Both of my brothers, who she has not met before, are there. Now I know that she's terrified of new, strange, specifically white men with beards. Both of my brothers are white men with beards. So I bring her into this house and she lost her mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I put her in, I was there for like 20 minutes and I had to turn around and go home in that same traffic.
Mm-hmm.
And I just
Felt defeated.
felt totally defeated. Didn't know, had no idea what to do about that.
Yeah. Where did all that go wrong? Why? How? Yeah.
And how do you even start? It was like somebody telling me they could literally talk to dogs.
Yeah.
Like that's what it felt like to find a trainer who could help me the way that it sounds like you help people is magic.
It's a beautiful thing. I'll tell you this though. It feels like magic, and even sometimes it might look like magic when you meet a really great trainer that knows how to do things really well, because we speak it. So a good trainer speaks it very fluently. I just walked in the room and started speaking Italian. That's all I'm doing. Like it's actually not magic, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It feels foreign.
Yeah.
And like that scenario that you described just now there's probably about 17 things I would have been like, okay, well, that's that. That happened because here. And sure, we could have, what would I have done? I would have done a certain set of things to solve that. And then how would I handle the drive? And then And then before I went in, and then now is she scared of white men with beards? Or is it every time she's ever experienced a white male with a beard, it's been in these stressful states? So now white men with beard are attached to stress. You might actually also get to a point where she actually enjoys this one guy that has a beard, but she loves him. Well, because that one's related to a positive thing. They're not that biased. They're actually very situationally specific. They value space and location and experiences. And association is how they learn. So that's all dog training is reassociating patterns.
Absolutely. And a year later, Thanksgiving was at my house and my brothers came here, and Ruth did try to go home with the same brother that she thought was going to murder her, because she was like, no, he's great. I don't know if you noticed, but he pets me all the time, and he was really bad at eating. So there's always food under his feet.
Yeah, I like him. And so there you are validating the exact point I would have been, if this was the first time we met, I'd be like, if you put in some work, we can teach her that's okay, right? I'm burdened with the task of trust me, believe in this, and let me teach you how to get there. But it takes a time. And you said 1 year later, and sometimes it does take that long. Maybe it was 1 year later because that was just situationally how it worked out.
The progress was in these fits and starts where it's like,
sorry, Amazon came in, Sadie. So now you can hear him. There's a guy in an orange vest. Good. Now my little deaf dog. I'm sorry. My little deaf dog. So that's my Sadie, my little boxer. These are the kind of things you edit out.
Great. No, I'll keep this in for sure.
The deaf dog, the white one, saw it. She went, who's that? And then they're like, yeah, I thought we should be scared.
I thought we should be scared. Dogs are so smart.
I knew it. There was somebody there, and there's someone there. And that's what I was like, Let that be a good example of how good girl. I mean, I said no, but I didn't apply any kind of correction, because Sadie, the brown boxer that I have, and Samson, somehow I got really scaredy dogs in my life. They're very nervous dogs. Sadie comes from an abusive situation, very scared of men. And there was a guy in a fluorescent vest and a hat and the whole thing dropping off Amazon packages. And so understandably, any dog's going to be like, who's that? I allow expression. Even if it means you go over grumbling a little bit. She used to bite people. She used to have much bigger reactions. So the fact that she's willing to move to the door with a little grumble and move away, but I said, good girl. I was rewarding her for coming away. Like, go express how you feel, but don't act on it. Feel your feelings, girl. Go ahead. So I try to empower the dog to feel their feelings, but also make good choices in those feelings. Well, I guess in therapy, right? I mean,
totally.
And then the little white one who's not scared of anything. She just barked, and then it set everyone else up.
Well, and then that's the thing, right? Is like, that's why I felt like I was getting such conflicting information, is because I would like search for what to do when your dog barks when people drive past the house. And I would get all of this information of like, you can't let them do that. Like, you have to yell and scream at them, or like they're scared, so you need to comfort them. So I think of my dog as my baby. I have got to a point where the yelling and screaming wasn't working. So then I was doing comforting, and for at least the biggest thing that they taught me was understanding what her cues were was really important because I didn't know what those were. The biggest thing for me is what it turns out was most of her behavior was she was under the impression that when she was barking, I was glad she was doing it because she was helping to protect me in the house, and that thing was scary because I would yell at the person to get away from us, and then I would comfort her.
Yeah, so she'd be like, yeah, get out of here. My style is a mix of a lot of styles. So like, while I align with, I need to tell you the yes and the no's. But when it comes down to it, I'm saying yes more than I am saying no, because like a kid in school, you've got to, if they're failing, it's because they're kind of getting out of their depth. They're out of their education level, right? And so I'm going to be looking for every bit of relevance, softness, and yielding. So when Sadie grumbled, and I was like, no. And then she looked away. I said, good. And then she started to go toward it, and she came away, good. I experience where people are saying no more than yes. And that's where I teach people about these elements of softness, because if you're really looking for softness, you are saying yes so much that you're nurturing that student in front of you to become better educated for the situation that just happened.
Just one example of a behavior, since Ruth loves looking out the window. It's the second floor. She loves to look down out the window. She used to just start barking at anything that walked by. The pieces that, again, I would not have known prior to understanding more of her signals is I used to only say good job if she did exactly what I wanted. If she never got up, if she made absolutely no noise.
If she was a robot.
And what I learned is, okay, so her natural reaction to the dog, to seeing literally anything outside, is to stand up, bark really loud at them. So it became, if she does one bark, that's progress. So if she stops after one bark, I would watch her catch herself.
That's it.
That gets a good job. It's not the bark that because that's the other thing too, is people are like, well, you can't reward bad behavior. I'm like, I'm not rewarding the bark.
The stop. Yeah, I rewarded the softness. I rewarded that moment that she looked at me. That's relevance. The moment her ears went like that, that's softness. Yielding, to talk about that, pressure you're feeling, you move away. So yielding, you didn't see it, but Sadie started to move to the door and she voluntarily came away. That's a yield. And I went, good. If you don't like something, move away, but remain soft and keep me relevant. If you're really having a hard time yielding on your own, then I might have to help you. I might have to add a little leash pressure. I might have to add a little verbal pressure. Hey, come, leave it, name, right? Some kind of verbal information. And I had to do that when she first started, because I could see her kind of coming fast around the corner, and I went, hey, and that was pressure. And then she stopped herself. That's progress. Again, this dog used to go ape over it and has bitten people and men and the whole thing's like, but she's not doing that anymore. So did I punish her for biting, or did I teach her how to feel better so you don't feel like you need to bite? And is it perfect? No, it never will be. Yeah. But are we better? Yes. And are we getting better every time Amazon comes to the door? I believe so. Because I'm always going to look for a yield and a softness and a relevance and if you're watching a dog, and it doesn't matter if they're in a follow state, because we're walking and I'm doing follow related exercises, or you're in a free state like they are right now, you need to be yielding pressure, soften the mind, and keep me important. And if you're doing those three things, I challenge anybody to name one problem you can't solve. If you have a dog doing those three things, I could solve anything. And so, you know, to me, that's what a well-trained dog looks like. I've taught them to yield. Some dogs aren't going to volunteer it. So how do we teach that? Well, that comes into technique. Yeah. You know, I'll apply a little pressure on the leash and I'll encourage the turnaround. I go, yes. And I mark them for that. And they're like, oh, okay. So then I coordinate this understanding that when I feel this, if I do that, I get a treat. Yeah. So then I start doing that, and then I create such a habit that they do it without me having, yes. And so I start creating, it leads to volunteered behavior if you understand how to keep moving the statute of what it takes to get the next thing, right? The rules have to change. They're a student. We're the teacher. So I have to teach you to teach them. So right? So again, I can walk in the room because I'm a good teacher and I speak the language and they're going to happen quickly, but I got to teach you. So that's why I focus. Let me teach you one or two things this lesson. That's all I can focus on because I'm going to teach you to see really important stuff. If my student barely knows 2 + 2, I'm not going to punish them when an equation comes up that is advanced geometry, is advanced calculus. So unfair. We wouldn't punish a toddler for not knowing that, right? But if a high schooler student turned in the wrong answer, we'd be like, what are you doing? I know you know better. And there would be an appropriate level consequence. So I do believe in accountability for a dog, like the no language or whatever. But even then it's appropriate for what it is. So, cause I really do believe that if the dog is struggling that bad, it's not because they're doing it to you. They're doing it because they don't know better. And an old mentor mindset, training is 90% direction, 10% correction. Like, and I align with that idea that like, they're just out of their depth. So you have to go back and be like, let me make this in terms you understand.
Having somebody explain to me that my dog, who was a puppy, she was a 1-year-old puppy. She looked like this big, scary dog. She acted like this big, scary dog. She was a little baby. She was under the impression that she was supposed to take care of our whole apartment and keep me safe from all of these things that she thought were terrifying. She thought that was her job. That was the whole first 6 months of me training her with this new stuff was, that is not your job. That is my job.
I got this.
Every time we go out of the house, I'm in charge because you being in charge, it's not that alpha thing that I think it's the thing that you're talking about with the follow. I'm not in charge in that, you have to submit to me.
No,
I'm in charge in that when the scary thing happens, you look at me and I'm going to take care of it. It is not your job to take care of it.
That's it. I'll protect you. Look to me for what you need. And ultimately I want to have a dog that doesn't need me to tell them anymore because I've taught them so well. I don't need to keep pointing them to the answer because a lot of training can also fall short where we get them so far, but it's still very dependent on us having to tell them what to do all the time. So I'm like, get out of that. It's why I stay out of obedience because it's like, okay, sit. I'm like, you still have to tell them to sit. If we're focusing on yielding, softness, relevance, they should just be there. A few moments have happened, but I didn't want to interrupt something we were talking about. But
so good.
Right after that whole thing happened with the door, Sadie and we started talking. She's here laying next to me right now. She came back and she went back to a soft state. So the recovery, I'm sure you experienced that with Ruth, right? The recovery from stress is quicker because you're teaching them how to dissolve stress. And therefore, if they live at a lower stress state, they're going to react less.
And once you can see those triggers and you can see what the dog is telling you, that's why that part is so not a part of the average dog's training.
That's right.
But was so critical for me learning with Ruth. Yeah. Once I could see those signals from her, then you can see the progress that felt magical. I was saying, where it's having this new training felt magical.
On our Instagram stories, we always post daily, go on these big pack walks and of course achieve these things seem whoa, how is that possible? Right. But the truth is each one of those dogs individually have an understanding of our expectations and we've put in the work and the owners have put in the work. So when they come here, this is just a day for us all to practice the same behaviors and have fun doing it. And so, we always post our day, pack walks, socials, enrichment games. I post things, my things I'm doing with clients, whatever. But our stories have a lot of those, you look like you can look. Another FedEx driver just dropped something off and they're just looking quiet.
Wonderful.
Good dogs. Good dogs. There was something earlier that we were talking about that I wanted to go back to with the correction. It's important to me because I'm not anti-correction. I'm about accountability. But I'm not a correction heavy trainer. Like I always say, I'm not a positive only trainer, but I'm not a correction based trainer, right? So what does that even mean, right? Because I do believe in accountability because I think any student needs to be held accountable. But back to the thing I said earlier, it needs to be appropriate, an appropriate level correction. And a lot of times when you give this, we're talking about the education level, right? When you teach a student and you create a really great student that's learning and growing and understands the education that you've presented for them, they don't even want to mess up, because it's not just like I'm putting you through school. I'm making you're having a good time too. Even though there's these stages of accountability, It's so few and far in between because I teach them to have fun and making the good choices. I think that is something really missing in the dog training world is
Yeah.
it's not just about commanding our presence and commanding their submission or compliance as much as teach them what they need to know. Absolutely. Hold them accountable where necessary. But if you're really motivating any student, you don't have to get on them all the time. You don't have to punish. And so that's why I always, a lot of my clients that I've worked with, I've never seen you correct a dog. I'm like, I don't have to. I'm not against it. I don't have to. They're so motivated to keep learning and keep trying. And I set up such an obvious way for them to please me, to get a yes, from yielding, softness, relevance.
Yeah.
That I'm going to be marking good stuff more than saying.
So often these new behaviors that I notice with Ruth, I'm not always aware of the ways that I'm communicating with her. But when I notice a behavior that I'm like, why on earth are you doing that?
Yeah.
It very quickly becomes clear that I was accidentally training her to do that. For example, she knows before I do what my routines are. Like if I do something differently.
They're so smart and they pick up on the most subtle things. And if you just come from this more empathetic perspective of, well, why are you doing that? Not like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Why? What's different? What's happening? Let's start asking questions. Let's start. We do that too as the people who get dogs. We'll see stuff and be like, that's not like them. And I'll start asking questions. So what's going on at home? Is there anything different? I'm noticing this, and the dogs, if you really know dogs, they tell you what's up,
Totally.
They're pretty simple creatures. They're they have a very immense range of emotion and ability and intelligence, but they don't have what humans have, which is all this logic and overthinking and they're just whatever. They just want to live life and have a good life.
As I mentioned earlier, we could go for another 8 to 10 hours because I can talk about dogs all day.
I know. Same.
Usually I end on like, how can people access this? But I think that because we've been talking about all of these foundational things and pieces, I think the question that I'm a little bit more interested in right now is, if you could magically make everybody on earth who loves dogs understand one thing about dogs that you find that people don't understand about dogs, what would the first thing be?
A lot of things pop into my head. If there's one thing, they're capable of more than you're giving them credit for. There's just a breakdown in your communication and understanding how to find your way to them. Like any relationship, you want them to come to you, but you've got to meet them halfway, and understanding how to do that in a way that still satisfies your expectations and needs, but now starts giving them the same in return, like a reciprocating relationship. Encouraging people to be empathetic and compassionate with their dog, but not on the end that they're over emotional, incapable of seeing what's actually happening in front of them. Like sometimes you have to be able to see past some of that emotion too. Gosh, I have a lot more on that, but that's probably just slow down and give your dog benefit of doubt and stop and look at its education level and ask yourself, is it fair what I'm asking? Yeah. And is this realistic? And maybe I have more work to do.
There was 2 things that were really important to me when I was first starting, like I call it training, but like that dog education that you're talking about, like truly understanding Ruth and going on that. There was 2 really big things for me. One was letting go of the shame that I had around having this bad dog. Like I had this reactive dog and I had so much shame and fear around that. And the idea that I might need to rehome her because I didn't know what else to do.
Yeah, I get it.
And I talked to a friend who was like, that might be the right thing for your dog. You're going to try all the other stuff. If that's the right thing for you and your dog, that's what has to happen.
And you're doing right by them.
So that being an option to do right by my dog was really, really freeing. Knowing that it was even possible that the problem was communication and not some inherent bad thing in me or my dog. It was that we couldn't talk to each other.
There was just a gap in the line.
It was hugely freeing.
Well, and again, another thing, if you're confused, so is your dog.
Yeah.
If you're lost, so is your dog. If you're frustrated, so is your dog. I promise they're not doing it to you.
Yeah.
They just don't understand.
Yeah.
It can't come down to telling them what to do. It's about connecting in a relationship. You can't tell anybody in a relationship what they need to do. You have to come to the middle, and you have to create a connection, the right kind of connection.
Oh, well, I think everybody is probably as obsessed with you as I am now. But so if people want to, in the kindest, most normal way, stalk you on the internet, how can they do that?
Well, we do have a website that's very thorough. It's www.thecaninerepublic.com, and that's spelt out. A lot of times people think K and 9. It's spelt out.
We'll put it in the episode description so you can find that there.
I always encourage people to read on my service, the training page, about my approach, about the requirements, because I've talked about how I have 5 appointments, before jumping to the contact.
And where are you located?
I'm in Santa Clarita, California.
Great.
But so I serve the greater part of LA, but a lot of folks come to me. I have people that drive very far, right? We hosted a ton of really cool, unique group events like swim camp and all kinds of really cool stuff. But honestly, one of the best I'm proud of, but also kind of serves as my best business card, is our social media. We're on Instagram, and you can look at the posts, which the posts are great. But where you really see our magic, our bread and butter, like where we hang our hat, me and my team, I have 3 employees. You'll see all of us on there, but that's on our Instagram in our stories, our day-to-day stories. Stories, they expire after 24 hours, but every day you see whatever we're doing. And we're kind of an open book. I'll post about my lessons and share what I'm doing with this individual person, and people can glean little tidbits and tips here and there. But then also just seeing we put into practice what we're preaching. And these are dogs in our daycare and our boarding that my team takes care of all day. And you'll see them pack walking and socials and all of this. And all of that is the product of what we do. And the dogs we board and the dogs we accept into daycare, we're kind of like a group, a club, in the sense that once we get past the foundational and you and your dog are on this plan, then you could be a part of these big community events and community this ecosystem so that everybody's on the same page. I'm real proud of our social media and the Instagram stories. You could really see us there. If people aren't in the LA area, we actually do a virtual training. COVID helped me develop that really well. But I have plenty of people all over the country and different parts of the world. But I host workshops. I do all kinds of group events, if not private lessons, and try to help everybody as best we can.
Are you okay with people who are reaching out to you and saying like, hey, I don't, can you help me figure out what kind of trainer I need? I think I need an in-person one. Like, how do I find a good trainer? That sort of stuff.
Sure. Of course. Exactly. I can help. If I know anybody, right? If I can, I'm more than happy.
Yeah. Well, and even just like sorting out, there's so much conflicting information out there about dog training and all that stuff that it is really, really daunting.
And that's also something I almost like as a PSA, I'd like to say is that, it's very easy to get caught up watching. There's so much free content out there, and that's like really awesome, but at the same time, a little dangerous because everybody and anybody can say they're a dog trainer, and they learn a little something somewhere, and then so really do your research. That unfortunately in the dog training world, there isn't some governing board over us, making sure we're doing our credentials and doing our homework before we are buying e-collars online and putting them on dogs, and we barely know what we're doing. There's a lot of inexperience out there posing as, don't just like what you see on their social or their website or whatever, but really any trainer that's credible would happily provide references. I mean, don't be afraid to ask these things of your trainer. And if a trainer gets weird about that, you got to look at it as you're building a relationship with your dog. It's like finding the right therapist. So you got to find the right trainer for you that resonates with what you're looking for. And don't let yourself get confused by listening to a lot of different things. Focus in on a style and approach you want. Lean into that and do your homework with the trainer you're considering before you drop a bunch of money.
It genuinely was like one of the most overwhelming things I've done. It's like I had this dog who I thought I might need to rehome, who was taking over my entire life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kim, for coming on. I really, really appreciate you being here and getting to talk about something that I'm obviously super passionate about as well. For people who are interested in Care So Much, obviously, we both want you to go listen to Yishun's episode if you haven't listened to that yet. It's on accessibility. And if you want to just email me all of your thoughts on dogs, please do. Also, all the pictures of your dogs. caresomuchpod@gmail.com. gmail.com is the way to do that. We're the same on all social, Care So Much Pod. And if there's something that you're really passionate about and you care about it a lot and you could talk about it all day long, every day, but you feel like you should calm down a little bit or tamp down your passion because nobody cares, just know that I care. I care so much.